Previously on Survivor Mediogalti Island. Following a terrible accident involving a trap that went undetected, Naoa was forced to be medically evacuated, causing the game to grind to a bit of a halt. For the entire next day, all three of the tribes struggled to wrap their heads around the terrible accident they had just witnessed. Even as the game slowly got back underway, the Skrulls tribe struggled to select a new leader now that Naoa had been evacuated. Eventually, Quinn the investigator was chosen as their leader, but then the Skrulls tribe lost an immunity challenge, and Quinn was immediately voted out as he was seen as an ineffective leader. After some time of quiet contemplation, Droven the inventor steps up and takes leadership of the Skrulls tribe instead. Later, all three of the tribes compete in a game of 10 pins for both reward and immunity, and the final set of throws comes down to a competition between Mauriciel and Kira. Oddly, Mauriciel's last throw is incredibly sloppy, causing many people on her tribe to believe that she deliberately threw the challenge in an effort to protect Kira. Later, Mios reveals to the tribe that Mauriciel and Kira are in fact in a relationship, and this turns the tribe against Mauriciel. This ultimately results in Mauriciel being voted off at Tribal Council. The next day, Jeff the Goblin announced a tribe swap, and unfortunately this tribe swap resulted in 3 unbalanced new tribes, ultimately leading to Thalion, Korakai, and Harsk also being voted off the island. However, as a result of the tribe swap, Kira was able to learn that Mios was instrumental in getting Mauriciel voted out. Later on, Jeff the Goblin announces that the 3 tribes will be merging into one Pathfinder tribe, and they will all be playing together now. However, on the new beach, a severe clash of styles erupts between more defensively oriented Pathfinders like Celtiel and other participants in the game who are trying to have a more relaxed and fun time with it. The Pathfinder tribe attends the Survivor auction, and Lim the Bard actually wins a magical Greater Ration potion, which puts him in the position of not needing to survive off island food for an entire 10 days. At the next immunity challenge, Sajan the Monk wins immunity, demonstrating incredible skill at a balance challenge, and then at Tribal Council, Kira arranges revenge for the ouster of Mauriciel by organizing a massive vote to expel Mios. Kira's plot is successful and Mios is voted off, but unfortunately Kira overplays her hand a bit, earning some chagrin from the other members of the Pathfinder tribe. That night, after Tribal Council, while Kira is on watch, pirates from the nearby town of Illas Magorti attack the Pathfinders' camp and steal the vast majority of their supplies. The Pathfinders survive the attack, and now they must play a game of survival on an island where ruffians could attack at any time. What will happen next on Survivor Mediogalti Island? The story continues today on the local disaster tour guide. Day 15. In the aftermath of the pirate attack, the newly merged Pathfinder tribe is in terrible disarray. In the light of the early morning sun, Celtiel is openly and loudly blaming Valeros and Kira for the pirate attack. Celtiel accuses Valeros of being lazy and not doing his part to chip in and ensure that the camp was defensible. But more than that, Celtiel tears into Kira, accusing her of literally sleeping on the job, as she did not successfully warn the Pathfinders of the incoming attack by the pirates. The Pathfinder tribe attempts to piece their camp back together, and a few hours after sunrise, Jeff the Goblin arrives. He informs them that he has heard about the attack, and production has worked overtime to find a new beach for them to set up on, where hopefully the pirates will not be able to discover them. Jeff the Goblin notes that production is assuming that the pirates in Illis McGorty must have been spying on some of the players when they made some of their trips into town. As a result, Jeff the Goblin encourages the Pathfinders to take extra steps and be more cautious to help ensure that everyone will be safe in the game going forward. The reward challenge for the day is cancelled so that the Pathfinders can move to a new beach, and Jeff the Goblin brings an assortment of simple goods, tents, tools, pots and pans, and a meager amount of rice, in an effort to help the tribe relocate. The mood is dour and all of the Pathfinders are on edge. This attack has definitely created a rift between several people in the tribe. As the new camp is being set up, Celtiel begins to lean on Sajan, Sione, and Lim in an effort to get them to target Valeros or Kira so that they can be voted out. Celtiel argues that Valeros and Kira put the rest of the tribe in danger, but is shocked to learn that all three have no interest in following that plan. There was a previous agreement. The Scrolls tribe needs to be eliminated first, and that is what they want to do. They argue that the next logical targets should be Drovin or Fumbus. One of those two should be voted out. Celtiel is frustrated that his desires are being ignored, but he does get a bit of a kick out of the fact that the illiterate Fumbus is happily delivering messages around camp containing all of these conversations. In their discussion, this alliance between the former Swords and former Spells tribes do note that there is a real risk that the Scrolls idol could be played, and they decide to split the vote, half of the vote going to Drovin and half of the vote going to Fumbus, so that even if the idol is played, one of the two remaining Scrolls players will be eliminated. Eventually, the Pathfinder tribe is brought to the day's immunity challenge, a game called Numb. It is a simple endurance challenge where large poles have been positioned out in the sea, and the challenge is very simple. The contestants just have to hang on to the pole as long as they can. The waves crash and splash around them, and victory is determined simply by who can resist the cold and the waves the longest. The Old Spells tribe begins to drop out very quickly, and Faya honestly isn't very far behind. Though, given the expression of some of the Spells tribe, you'd almost think they know they aren't in trouble, and that this challenge isn't particularly important to them. The competition between former Swords members and former Scroll members is much more competitive, but the final battle ultimately comes down to a three-way match between Valeros, Sajan, and Drovin. Drovin drops out first, leaving Valeros and Sajan, but Valeros seems to know that he is in trouble, and ultimately Valeros manages to hang on the longest, winning immunity for Tribal Council. At Tribal Council, Jeff the Goblin sparks a conversation about the pirate attack and the aftermath of the attack, and he attempts to focus the conversation on what is being done to ensure the safety of everyone in the game, but this only makes Celtiel angry. It's not long before he starts tearing into Valeros and Kira, causing Jeff to be a bit taken aback. Jeff the Goblin actually asked if Valeros or Kira are being targeted for the vote tonight, and in a huff, Celtiel just says, "I only control my vote." The Pathfinder tribe does go to vote, but before Jeff can read the votes, Drovin stands up, saying that he'd like to play an immunity idol. Jeff confirms that Drovin does indeed have an immunity idol, and then, in a twist, Drovin gives the immunity idol to his friend Fumbus. Fumbus is shocked. Drovin leans down to his friend and says, "I think you have more to prove in this game than me, my friend. Let's keep you around for another night." Fumbus is fighting to hold back the tears as Drovin says this. The votes are read. 5 votes for Fumbus, don't count. 4 votes for Drovin, 2 votes for Sione. Drovin is out of the game. As his torch is being snuffed, Drovin looks at Fumbus one last time and says, "Make me proud." Day 16. A new and quite obvious alliance has formed in the Pathfinder tribe. Celtiel, Sione, and Lim are leading a massive alliance, and they appear to have control of the camp. However, there's also a clear pecking order to that alliance, and two members of that alliance are clearly on the outs. Valeros and Kira find themselves quickly bonding with Fumbus as their old tribes have abandoned them. Siltiel is leading the Pathfinder tribe as if he is a king who cannot be challenged. He knows how everyone will vote, and he knows how everything will be played. The Scrolls idol is finally out of the game, and while he's not sure between Lim and Fea who might have an idol, that's an issue he knows he can solve with time. With his newfound power in place, Siltiel sets out to establish his endgame and make sure everyone know that he is in charge and he cannot be stopped. Throughout the day, his dutiful goblin errand boy, Fumbus, delivers message after message after message, relaying the commands of the king of the Pathfinder tribe. Of course, Fumbus is meeting very regularly with Valeros and Kira, and it doesn't take them long to figure out that Linny, Sajan, and Naumika are little more than pawns in Siltiel's game. They know that those three players can be sacrificed at a moment's notice if it serves Siltiel's whims, and they begin to hatch a plan to try to recruit them over to their side and maybe change the balance of power. Fumbus goes to recruit Linny, and Drugami loves Fumbus. They get along wonderfully, so it doesn't take long to persuade Linny to switch sides. Valeros approaches Naumika, and Naumika reveals that she is more than happy to throw a wrench in Siltiel's plans. And before Valeros can say anything to Sajan, Naumika simply notes that Sajan will be on board too. Siltiel is busy conspiring to arrange a vote against Kira, and his opposition quickly catches wind of his plans. Realizing that they have a chance to arrange a blindside, the group begins to discuss who to target. Lim might have an idol, so they discuss whether it would be better to target Sione or Siltiel directly. As the discussion takes place, Naumika realizes that there is a narrow window of opportunity where she can refrain from openly defying Siltiel, and she offers to have her and Sajan split the vote against Valeros to help ensure that Valeros or Kira will be voted out. The new alliance agrees to this plan, and Naumika approaches Siltiel with her suggestion. Thinking he has the game in control, Siltiel agrees. Today's immunity challenge is a relatively simple one. Jeff the Goblin announces a pop quiz featuring questions about the contestants that have been competing in this game of Survivor, along with some questions about the location where the game is being played. It is essentially a memory challenge where players who miss questions are slowly eliminated from the game. This challenge is pretty solidly dominated by members of the former Spells tribe, and ultimately it is a four-way challenge between them who is going to win immunity. Despite an impressive performance by Kira, Lim ultimately takes the win and gains immunity. At Tribal Council that evening, Siltiel is practically glowing as he marches in, and Jeff the Goblin actually asks him about it, wondering why Siltiel seems so confident and so happy. Siltiel simply smirks and says, "People get what they deserve sometimes." Valeros and Kira ignore the obvious dig that is being thrown their way, and after a few moments the time to vote arrives. As the votes are being read, Siltiel is initially elated every time that Valeros or Kira is mentioned, but as the vote stretches on, his nerves begin to worsen. The final tally, Valeros 3, Kira 3, Sione 4. Shock hits Sione's face as she realizes that she's been voted out, and Siltiel's expression sours just a second afterwards. In fact, Siltiel's response is far more dramatic. He's so angry he fails to contain the question, "Who flipped?" As Siltiel huffs and stares around the tribe, Sione gathers her composure, stands up, looks at the tribe and says, "Well played, whoever you are." Her torch is snuffed, and she is gone. Day 17. The next morning, Siltiel wakes up early and immediately begins to grill every member of the tribe about their votes. "Someone flipped, I need to know who it was." He even takes a moment to ask poor little Fumbus if he saw anyone passing notes to other players. Fumbus thinks for a second and says, No, I haven't. But now that I think about it, I don't know where Sajan was yesterday. Fumbus's bluff works like a charm. Celtiel, Lim, and Faya are now openly working together and are not even trying to conceal their alliance. They immediately decide that Sajan must be the traitor, and they begin to plot how to take him down. Of course, even with now Mika and Lenny under their control, there's still a chance that their opposition could pull another fast one. As this conversation takes place, Faya reveals her idol to Celtiel. All we need to do is know who they are targeting. Figure that out, and I can make sure we win this round. The trio nods, and soon, Dodgy the Fox scampers away and hides in the bushes. Later that day, Valeros and Sajan are meeting to discuss their plans and how best to divide up their votes. Neither of them notices a small fox in the bushes nearby. In addition to confirming Sajan's betrayal, Dodgy, and Faya by extension, are able to overhear the next target. Celtiel doesn't have an idol. If he doesn't win immunity, it's time to take him down. Valeros and Sajan note that Lim might have an idol, but Lim could be a good backup target if Celtiel ends up winning immunity. At the immunity challenge later that day, each of the Pathfinders is presented with an obstacle course and a puzzle. The obstacle course is slick with mud, and the Pathfinders are tasked with dragging puzzle pieces through the obstacle course and then attempting to arrange the pieces and spell out a phrase at the end. During this challenge, poor Fumbus is visibly struggling, as the mud is really just weighing him down, and he falls far behind the rest of the group. Fumbus hasn't even started his puzzle when Kira slams the final piece into place, spelling out the phrase individual immunity. Kira is safe at tonight's vote. That night at Tribal Council, Celtiel proves to be surprisingly calm despite the setback that he suffered the previous evening. Jeff the Goblin asks him about it, and Celtiel says, Hey, it's all a game. They played well last night, but it's a new hand of cards. Could fall differently. Jeff the Goblin also talks to Valeros and Kira and asks them how they're feeling, especially since they have recently been targets. Both of them also give confident replies. We made it through last night. I suspect we'll find support again tonight. The tribe goes to vote, but before Jeff stands up to read the votes, Faya announces that she has an idol and she'd like to play it on Celtiel. Everyone around Tribal Council, and all of the members of the jury, freak out when this happens. Celtiel is grinning triumphantly as Jeff reveals that yes, it is a legitimate immunity idol. As the vote plays out, there are 4 votes for Celtiel, and they don't count. Now Mika takes 2 votes, Sajan takes 3. Celtiel offers a dismissive later traitor as Sajan's torch is snuffed and he exits the game. Day 18. The new day opens with another rainstorm, but thankfully this is a much smaller weather system and it moves through shortly after sunrise. Still, the Pathfinders begin their morning huddling together and trying their best to stay warm. Everyone is hungry, well, except for Lim, and Celtiel is continuing to boss people around and sending people out to do their jobs around the camp. In private, Celtiel talks with Lim and Faya and admits that he's unsure about their position. If Valeros and Kira could flip Sajan, they might be able to flip someone else. I think we need to cut a deal if we're going to maintain our hold on this game. Later, Fumbus carries some camp instructions to Lenny, where Lenny discovers that she has been offered a Final Four deal with Lim, Faya, and Celtiel. Lenny graciously accepts. The new four-person alliance meets and settles on their next target. Lenny states that now Mika is the obvious threat. There are more and more endurance challenges coming into play, and now Mika has a clear advantage. They need to take her out if they want to ensure a smooth path forward. Valeros, Kira, and Fumbus naturally react to all of this news with elation. Their alliance remains undetected, and this is the perfect opportunity to break up their opposition. All they have to do is make sure that now Mika wins the next immunity challenge. That immunity challenge comes in the form of a game known as Last One Standing. A series of floating platforms bob unsteadily in the water, and the players are paired up in twos with a simple goal: shove your opponent in the water to progress. Lenny is paired up with Lim, and Lenny easily manages to push the bard into the water. Fumbus is paired up with Naumika, and though Fumbus gives it a valiant effort, Naumika takes an easy win. Thea is matched up with Kira, and Kira swiftly dispatches her opponent and leaves her soaked. The first serious match is between Valeros and Celtiel. The match is intense, and both rivals know that this is an important contest. They need the win. Several times, both manage to push their foe near the edge, and several times, both manage to inch their way back. The match goes on for nearly 10 minutes when, suddenly, Celtiel shifts his strategies. He grabs Valeros and pulls him in time with the rocking of the platform. This catches Valeros off guard, and both men crash, rolling towards the edge of the platform. Ultimately, both men fall into the water, but as Celtiel knew that it was coming, he manages to slow his roll just enough that he hits the water second, meaning ultimately Celtiel wins. After a short break, and a lot of excitement from the previous matches, the competition resumes. Next, Kira is paired up against Naumika, but Kira remembers the discussion from earlier, so while Kira puts on a show, she ultimately allows herself to slip back time and time again until she finally gets shoved into the water, handing Naumika the win. Celtiel is paired up against Lenny, and unfortunately due to the size difference, Celtiel takes an easy win in his second match. This means that the final contest is between Celtiel and Naumika, and the anticipation is palpable. Naumika's physique is more suited to wrestling, but her particular combat style is focused on range weapons with a little bit of shoving tactics mixed in. Celtiel is lighter weight, but is far more experienced in up-close combat. Much like the match with Valeros, both contestants know that this is a must-win match, and both of them throw their all into the contest. 3 separate times, Naumika uses a mighty shove to drive Celtiel back, and on the third time, he almost tips into the water, but manages to right himself. Despite her successes, the problem for Naumika is that her strategy relies on her also moving close to the edge every time she tries to shove Celtiel into the water. Celtiel, noticing this opening, takes advantage of it, and with a sudden spin, he repeats the maneuver that he pulled against Valeros. A maneuver taking full advantage of the weakness of Naumika's strategy. Again, both contestants go down. Again, both contestants roll rapidly towards the water. And again, because Celtiel knew it was coming, Celtiel lands in the water second, meaning Celtiel has immunity. Back at camp, Valeros, Kira, and Fumbus begin to try to organize a new plan as Naumika does not have immunity. They talk about their original plan with Naumika and ask her how best to proceed, seeing as she doesn't have immunity. Naumika smiles coyly. "Oh, I have a sharp eye. I spotted this a while ago." And she pulls out the Sword Camp immunity idol, which she had been holding on to for quite some time. Elated, the Alliance forms a quick and simple plan. Like before, Lenny will play along with Celtiel and vote with him, Thea, and Lim in their attempt to vote out Naumika. Meanwhile, Naumika will play her idol, negating all of those votes. This leaves 4 votes in play, which the Alliance decides to split 2-2 between Fea and Lim. They reason that Celtiel might decide to play his immunity necklace for one of his allies, but even if he does, they'll still get to vote the other one out, and if he doesn't, that means one of the 2 will be forced to be voted out in the runoff. That evening, at Tribal Council, Jeff the Goblin spends several minutes talking about the incredible game of Last One Standing that was played earlier in the day. Valeros, Naumika, and even Celtiel spend a lot of time just bragging on their opponents and the incredible contest, and there is a general air of camaraderie among all of the Pathfinders as they acknowledge the excellent matches that took place. Jeff the Goblin asks if the performance during Last One Standing means that one of the people that did well deserves to win after such an incredible display, but all of them try to play that down. Celtiel opines, all that really matters are the votes. After the players go to vote, but before Jeff can read them, Naumika stands up and plays her immunity idol, and Valeros and Kira pump their fists. Their plan is working. Jeff asks if anyone else needs to make a play, and Celtiel just calmly shakes his head no. The final tally is 1 vote, Naumika, doesn't count. 2 votes for Lim, 2 votes for Fea, 3 votes for Kira. The tribe is silent, absorbing what has happened. And after a moment, Celtiel calmly looks over and says, "Well, Kira, it seems you fell asleep on the job once again. Goodbye." Equal parts hurt and angry, Kira stands up, says a quick goodbye, and her torch is snuffed. After Tribal Council is over, Celtiel walks over to Lenny and says, Now, don't be upset. You did your part and we did ours. We'll still knock Naumika out of the game for you, and next time, she won't be able to play her idol to protect her." Day 19. As the Pathfinder tribe wakes up to a new day, Valeros seems visibly ill, and everyone assumes that he must be upset about the play that Celtiel organized the night before. In fact, Valeros is just staying over on one side of the camp, barely moving, and they begin to notice his face is pale. Then, Lenny and Celtiel begin to get visibly sick too. In fact, everyone around camp is feeling ill. Everyone, that is, except for Lim. As Lim is the only player with his senses about him, he quickly figures out what is going on. The food has gone bad. Lim employs Fumbus and Fea to help him, and they all arrive at the same conclusion: the food has been poisoned. An hour later, Jeff the Goblin and the production team arrive to help distribute medical treatment. Fumbus is using his skills as an alchemist to mix antidotes to the best of his ability to help players recover from the effects of the poison. Thankfully, the poison seems to have been relatively mild, but as almost all the players ate breakfast that morning, there's a lot of strain to be had from the illness and hunger that they have suffered. Only Lim managed to avoid this fate. Jeff the Goblin cancels the immunity challenge and Tribal Council for the day in order to give the players a chance to recover, but as the afternoon stretches out, paranoia begins to creep into the camp as people begin to lay suspicion on who might have tried to poison the food. Slowly, 3 major suspects begin to emerge. Lim, after all, was benefiting from a greater ration tonic. He never imbibed the poison. Was Lim taking advantage of his magical boon and trying to harm the other players in order to cut them out of the game? Of course, there's also Fumbus. He's an alchemist, and he likes to cook. He's cooked on several occasions. He has both the knowledge base and the opportunity to try and poison his tribe. And then, of course, there's Fea. As a witch, she has all kinds of experience brewing different kinds of concoctions. That could potentially include poisons. What if Fea was trying to target someone in the tribe for some dark reason. These suspicions throw the existing alliances in camp into utter chaos as accusations and denials begin to travel all over the place. Fairly quickly, Celtiel and Lenny come to the conclusion that Fumbus is not the guilty party. First, Fumbus spent a lot of time trying to whip up antidotes to help people recover from the poison, and Celtiel also privately muses that Fumbus just isn't crafty enough to come up with a scheme like that. Lenny's take on the situation is a little more kind-hearted. Remembering all of the times that Fumbus and Dragami played together, Lenny thinks to herself, Fumbus would not have tried something so terrible. Valeros, who apparently took the heaviest dose of the poison and suffered the most as a result, is definitely unnerved by the event, and initially, Valeros doesn't trust anyone. However, as the day progresses, Lim begins to make the case that he was the one who had the presence of mind to realize what was going on, and he was one of the ones who helped to identify the problem. This persuades Valeros to trust him. Now, Mika is standoffish from the group and really doesn't discuss her thoughts with anyone, but after a while, she approaches Faya and simply says, "You have the least to gain by poisoning others, and the most to risk by eating some of it. I don't think you are our poisoner." With suspicions and tensions at an all-time high, new alliances are forming, and a new set of accusations begin to go out. Faya blames Lim as he avoided the poison entirely. Lim blames Fumbus as Fumbus is frequently near the cookpot. And Fumbus, burned by some of the crafty plays that Faya made earlier on the Scrolls tribe, suspects that Faya is the one ultimately responsible. Day 20. With the Pathfinders recovered and no way to truly identify the poisoner, Jeff the Goblin is forced to admit that there's no choice but for the game to go on. Jeff the Goblin introduces the next game, a Survivor classic known as the Perch. Contestants must stand on a narrow perch above the water, testing their balance and endurance as the waves occasionally splash them, and once again the victory condition is fairly simple. The last person standing wins. Sadly, the outcome of this match is fairly evident early on in the game. Lim is the only player who did not imbibe the poison the previous day, and as a result, he is far less drained than the other players. Additionally, Lim's smaller stature and natural balance give him a serious edge during the contest. Valeros and Naumika fall early, and Celtiel tumbles down not long after that. Lenny and Faya do better, both lasting over an hour each, but both of them ultimately fall off as well. The contest ultimately comes down to Lim and Fumbus. Lim is convinced that Fumbus is the villain, and no matter how much Fumbus protests that he is innocent, Lim is intent on seeing the villain cast down. Lim's emotional assaults do not help Fumbus in his attempts to stay on his perch, and ultimately, Fumbus falls into the water as well. Lim has immunity. That night, at Tribal Council, Jeff the Goblin does his best to try to maintain order, reminding the Pathfinders that there is no definitive proof of who actually poisoned the camp's food. Unfortunately, that does nothing to prevent accusations from flying left and right. Faya blames Lim. Lim blames Fumbus. Fumbus doesn't want to blame anyone, but tearfully admits he thinks Faya is to blame. Each accusation just pushes the tensions higher and higher until finally, Jeff the Goblin is forced to end the conversation as he says, "Let's just hope that this vote gets rid of our poisoner." Ultimately, the votes this round follow the suspicions of the player. Lim cannot receive any votes, but Fumbus receives 2 votes, and ultimately, Faya takes 5 votes. When Faya realizes that she's been voted out, She snaps and begins shouting, "I didn't do this! Your camp is still in danger! This game is cursed!" She storms out of camp after her torch is snuffed. As Faya storms into the darkness, Fumbus cries after her, "I'm sorry!" But she refuses to respond. And in the dark of night, no one notices a small red praying mantis hiding in the trees, watching the events of the tribal council unfold below them. That is where we will pause today's story. More survivors have been voted out, more dangers have been revealed, and as the number of players in the game diminishes, the in-game alliances have shifted dramatically to reflect the suspicions by this poisoning event. How will this game ultimately play out, and which of our remaining Pathfinders will ultimately claim the crown? Find out in the last video of this series what would happen if the Pathfinder Iconics Competed in Survivor, episode number 5, The Soul Survivor. Until then, jump down to the comments section and let me know what you think about this story so far. Do you agree with how the events have played out, or do you think some of these events would have played out differently? Also, let me know which of the remaining Pathfinders you think will ultimately claim the crown of Soul Survivor. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this story. As always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.